Hey there, I'm Rachel Ehring, and you're listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. Get inspired as we discuss creative resources, trends in piano pedagogy, ways to grow your income and streamline your studio, and new ways to engage your students each week. If you are a teacher who wants to go beyond the method books to create an innovative studio that fosters lifelong music makers, you've come to the right place. Hi there, piano friends. I am so happy that you are joining me today for this episode. My guest today is Ashley Danyew, and there are many topics that Ashley and I could have talked about, but I decided to choose one that Ashley said she's never actually talked about on a podcast before, but I think you're really going to enjoy hearing it. We are taking a deep dive into work retreats today. Ashley shares her many years of experience going on work retreats and helps us understand how to prep for a retreat and set realistic expectations. Here's a little bit about Ashley. Ashley Danyew, PhD, is a musician, educator, writer, and entrepreneur. She's the founder and editor of Musician & Co., equipping classical musicians with the tools and education they need to be small business owners. A graduate of the University of Georgia and the Eastman School of Music, Ashley has over 10 years of experience running an online business and 15 plus years of curating a portfolio career. Her website, ashleydanyew.com, includes a blog, resource library, and courses for music educators and church musicians. And between that and Musician & Co., she serves an email list of 25,000 and a combined readership of 344,000. At Musician & Co., Ashley is dedicated to providing educational tools, resources, and services to support self-employed musicians and music freelancers so they can build and manage a music career that's as diverse and unique as they are, one that's financially secure, artistically fulfilling, and made to last. And isn't that what we all want? Here is my interview with Ashley. Hi, Ashley. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here today. Could you introduce yourself and tell us a little about your business?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really delighted to be here today. I am Ashley Danyew. I'm a piano teacher. I'm a podcast host, and I'm the founder of Musician & Company, equipping classical musicians with the tools and education they need to be small business owners. Because I believe that there are more opportunities today to have and build your own music career than ever before, especially if you're willing to lean into those things that separate you from everyone else who does the same thing you do. But it does require this separate set of skills and education that we don't often get from music school. And they're just kinds of things that we need to learn in the field, doing it, right? Running your business just takes time to get going and figure out, what do I need to know to do this? So maybe you found yourself needing to learn about business structures or legal and copyright issues or finances and pricing. I know you talked about that recently on your podcast. Email marketing or web design, there's all these things that are adjacent to our music or our art that we have to know as business owners, because we wear two hats, right? We're the person doing the work in the business, and we're the one running it behind the scenes. So I started Musician & Company to help bridge that gap by offering a free blog and resource library and education and one-to-one support and a suite of business templates specifically for self-employed musicians.
Great. And I've been following your work for a while, Ashley. You may or may not know that. But so I love everything that you offer for teachers. And so when I was preparing for this interview, I was like, what should we talk about? What would be really useful to teachers? And I thought about, all the different business topics you have. And I mean, those would have been amazing, but we decided to go a different route today. So today we're going to be talking about creating, a planning retreat for teachers. So talking about prepping for the fall for those of us in the US who are kind of gearing up toward the start of school. So the way this came about is I don't know if it was last year or maybe the year before, I saw on your Instagram that you were on this planning retreat with your husband, who is your business partner. And I just kind of followed along with your retreat. Like, you were eating good food, you were taking brand photos, you're doing all these things. So if you could give us a little bit of background of maybe your retreats, how this idea has come about and some of the things you've done.
Yeah. So we try, my husband is also self-employed. So as two self-employed business owners, each kind of doing our own thing, we decided, I think we started this like 8 years ago, maybe, that once a year we would take a few days, usually during the winter months when we're kind of ready to get out, have a little bit of cabin fever, that we would take a few days and just set some time aside to do some big picture planning in our businesses. So getting perspective, just dreaming big, setting some goals, and making big decisions in our businesses. So we try to do this once a year. It's usually in the first quarter. This year it was in February, over February break, which is great for teachers. We have this built-in time usually during that first quarter where we could go and do something like this for a few days. So this year we rented a little house in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which is just over the border in Canada. It was like an hour and a half from us. It's very close. And it was within walking distance to the downtown area, which is so cute. If you haven't been to Niagara-on-the-Lake, it's adorable. And I did share some behind the scenes of our time there on Instagram this year to kind of show you a little bit of what we do. So we spend so much time as small business owners and as teachers working in our businesses. And this is what I was talking about a minute ago, being the other person, wearing the other CEO kind of hat and dealing with the big picture planning and is this working? And is this what I want my career and my studio to look like? Or are there things that I want to do differently? And being able to zoom out and think about your business as a whole and spend time talking that out with somebody else can be really helpful. So even though Steve is not a teacher, I can talk to him about decisions that I'm considering making in my studio or things that I'm thinking about doing differently. And he is a composer. He can talk to me about commissions and consortiums and things that he's working on that are not specific to my business, but that I can kind of be a sounding board for him. So we find it helpful to kind of do that together. And again, we usually rent an Airbnb for a few days that's somewhere close within a couple of hours. We bring our dog, we bring our computers, we bring a few books, we bring snacks, of course, because what is a work retreat without snacks?
I love this idea so much because I think if other teachers are like myself, I just get all these ideas all the time, like coming into my head. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should go down this rabbit hole. Maybe I should do this. Oh, I should do this in my business. And I need to just take a step back and look at the whole picture and maybe plan out we'll get into what exactly you do, but maybe plan out the year or plan out the quarter, whatever, so that I'm not like feeling scrambled and going down these rabbit holes.
Absolutely. I think Bill Gates does the Think Week. Have you heard about that before? It's just a week that he takes to read and just absorb things or to just think and process things. So as teachers, we get all these ideas. And I've started keeping a note on my phone of just things I'm thinking about. And I just make a list as something comes across my plate in some way, something comes to mind. I see someone else talking about something and I think, oh, I should explore that, or I should spend some time thinking about that, put it on the list. And the work retreat is a great opportunity to just go through that list and actually think about those things that you want to be intentional about.
Yeah. So what is it about getting away that is better than just setting aside a few hours at home to do this?
I think that it shows that you're serious about it. So if you're making plans to go somewhere, to travel for a few days, it requires more planning and preparation. You're investing time and money usually for that, which often means that you're just a little bit more committed and dedicated to it. You're going to do the work, you're going to follow through because you're really carving out that time in your calendar. Plus, it means you're blocking off those days so that if you're home, it's possible that things could come up that might need your time or attention that would steal you away from that time that you're devoting to your business or just interrupt you. There's more interruptions when we're home that we don't necessarily have the same control over. If you go somewhere else, usually those things are not going to be as much of an issue. So setting aside a few hours at home can still be really valuable and beneficial. And I can talk more about that too, how we've done that in the past. But you have to work a little bit harder to protect that time and tune out those distractions and clear your head and then get your actual work done if you're just doing it from home.
Yeah, I find that when I'm home, I'm thinking about the dishes or I need to do this laundry first or trying to do the laundry at the same time. Or I don't know, there's just so much, I think, mental load at home that is taken away when you go away to another place somewhere. So you said that you talk about or you think about the big picture things. Can you dive a little deeper into what you actually work on the retreat?
Yeah, I think it's varied from year to year. Like I said, we've been doing this for many years now, and every year it's a little bit different what we're focusing on based on where we are and where we want to be going in the next few months. So for me, depending on the year in my business, I've used Work Retreat as a time to talk about a new website that I want to build out. Like I'm moving my website from one platform to the other. So I'm looking at design and page layouts and structure and organization, things like that. Or changing to a new email marketing platform. I did that basically in a work retreat, researching the options and then figuring out the technical, how to do this, how to flip it over, how to build an email in this new email builder and all those things. We've used it as time to focus on marketing and mapping out social media for a launch or a project that we want to create and put out there. What does that look like timeline wise? Same thing with like course hosting platforms and researching software and tools like that, building out a new product or a service that I want to offer, adding value to my piano studio. I remember one year where I was kind of focused primarily on my studio and what that looked like. Am I happy with the offerings that I have? I wanted to start offering more group classes and studio classes. So what does that look like? How often? What ages of students will go together in those groups? What will I charge for that? All those sorts of things.
It sounds like you kind of pick one big topic. I think that my tendency would be to think, okay, this is my chance. I'm going to pick all the topics and do everything during these 2 days. How do you kind of narrow it down to that one thing?
Yeah, I was going to say that sometimes the focus for me has been on just one specific area of my business because I do multiple things. So depending on the year, I may be more focused a little bit on my studio than on my blog or online business. And then the next year I might be more focused on my blog and online business, and my studio is good and it's kind of running as it needs to. So I think deciding based on how much time you have to set aside for a work retreat and how many different things you have going on and which ones maybe need your attention, which ones you want to build out and grow a little bit more, which ones you're happy with how they're working and you don't really need to, you can do a little bit of reflection on those, but you're not actively building or developing something. So for me, I tend to focus on what do I need to actively work on, which part of my portfolio kind of needs my attention right now. And the other parts are self-fulfilling, self-sustaining, I guess is the word.
And then when you're actually on the retreat, talk to us about how your day looks. Is it a lot of brains with your husband, or is it more individual time, or is it kind of a combination of both?
Yeah, so I do a lot of prep work before the work retreats on my own. So for me, it is a little bit of both solo and collaborative work if you take it all as a whole. We do build in time as well for independent work each day. So we have a mix of talking and brainstorming ideas out loud and reflecting and working on things by ourselves. And we do a mix of strategy sessions and independent work. So usually we'll start with the afternoon that we get there. One of us will have a strategy session. And this is usually 45 minutes to an hour. We used to do a little bit longer than that, but we found that the shorter sessions can be just as effective. And it really helps you avoid that information overload, because I'm especially prone to that. After 60 to 90 minutes of really digging deep on a topic, I am like totally saturated with ideas and to-dos, and it just feels very big and overwhelming. So 45 minutes is a little bit more streamlined and can be a little bit more focused. That's your dedicated time to just really deep dive into whatever you want to talk about, something you're struggling with or can't figure out. Ask questions of the other person. Do you think I should do this? Does this make sense? Or planning something if you have a new project or website updates that you want to make. Sometime this year we did website audits for each other. So Steve went through my website, I went through his website, and just kind of talked out loud as the other person was reading and saying like, yeah, I'm not sure about this. This doesn't make sense here. Or I think you could swap these pictures, or et cetera, et cetera. So it's helpful sometimes to just get somebody else's eyes on something that you're working on. So it can be kind of a review or audit like that too. After that 45 minutes, then we go to our separate corners and we do independent work for an hour, 2 hours, something like that. And that's our time to really just kind of process everything that we just talked through, because strategy sessions can be a lot to take in. It's a lot of new ideas to research or study or think through. Maybe you leave with more questions than you brought in, but maybe you have a little bit more focus and clarity on what questions to ask now after talking it through. So the independent work time is a good time to take action on some of those things. So I like to start doing my research on the work retreat instead of waiting till I get home. I like to go ahead and make task lists and timelines for things. Okay, if I want to update my website this year, what needs to happen? What are my goals for when I want that to be done? Evaluating new tools and software. Like I've said, I've used Work Retreat several times for that when I need to make a shift in my business in one area or another. Steve uses it sometimes to write email template drafts of emails he wants to send out. He'll go ahead and start working on those marketing materials or just outlining a new project. So we do have the balance of working together and working on our own.
Talk to me about a solo teacher who doesn't have, a live-in person that they can do a work retreat with. What do you recommend for a solo teacher who's working on their own?
It's absolutely possible to do this on your own. You can do all the things that we're talking about just with yourself and just taking that dedicated time to ask those questions and to spend time thinking about those things you want to be thinking about and those new ideas that you have. You can always ask a teacher friend to join you for a few sessions to talk about your studios and brainstorm and just bounce ideas off of each other. But you can absolutely do it on your own. And like I said, you can set aside a day or 2 or 3 on your calendar for some deep work. You can do it from home, or you could take yourself out somewhere and really dig deep in a place that maybe doesn't have as many distractions or interruptions.
Great. So like I mentioned, in the US, teachers are starting to plan for the new school year. I would love for you to give teachers some ideas of some of the things that they should be thinking about and planning for the new year, whether they go on a work retreat or whether it's just looking ahead to that new year.
Well, first, I created a free work retreat workbook for musicians, and it's in the Musician and Company resource library. And I developed it for myself for these work retreats, but then I decided to share it because people were asking, what do we do? How do we do this ourselves? So in that resource, you'll find the prep work framework that we use so that you can see exactly what we work through and start evaluating those things in your business. But I can get you the link to that for the show notes. Here's what I recommend though for prep work. So I look back on the past 12 months and I evaluate successes, difficulties, 3 things that I want to focus on. I kind of reevaluate my vision statement. And then I think about 3 to 4 things that I kind of want to focus on that I either want to evaluate or I want to discuss or really focus on during the work retreat time. And then maybe a few ideas or possibilities of things like for the future. These are potential ideas. I may not get into them on the work retreat, but they're just in the back of my mind of something that I might want to pursue in the future. So I kind of work through each of those sections. For successes, I think, what did I achieve in my business this year? You might think, what worked well in your studio? I usually do a year in review type of thing too. So you might look at the numbers, like, did you take on X number of new students? Did you offer 2 or 3 recitals instead of just 1? Did you teach, how many studio classes or group classes did you teach? Did you offer piano camps? What was your enrollment numbers for this year? So looking just kind of a big picture, what happened in the last year, right? What went well? What was successful? How many blog posts did I write or conference presentations did I give and those sorts of things? And then as you're doing that, you might come across some difficulties and some challenges. So what are some challenges that you faced in your business or your studio this year? What was something that did not work well that you want to redo for the coming year? A system or strategy, lesson planning that took too much time, group classes that you felt unprepared to teach, and things like that. So think back to maybe things that didn't go as planned, even if you had planned them, maybe they didn't go as planned and you just need to kind of zhuzh that a little bit for the coming year. Thinking about 3 things you want to focus on, whether that's specific like teaching strategies or business skills that you want to develop for your studio. Your vision statement is kind of just your definition of success, and that is different from person to person, and it changes for different seasons of our life too. So think about, what does success look like for you in this season, and are you still working towards that? And then finally, the things you want to evaluate or discuss with someone, your offerings, evaluating, what things you provide in your studio, one-to-one lessons, group classes, camps, performance opportunities, theory classes. Maybe you want to look at the business side and you want to look at pricing, structures, or marketing, or the systems and tools that you're using to run your studio, and those sorts of things. So that's kind of the prep work process that I go through. And then once you have that reflection piece done and you have some of these things written down, you'll have a much better idea of what you really want to focus on during that work retreat time.
Okay, so this is before you ever go on the retreat that you're going through this kind of worksheet thing. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And then when you're actually on the retreat, do you plan non-work related activities, or is it all just head to the ground working? Nose to the ground? I don't know whatever the idiom is.
So we have settled on this rhythm, like I said, of the strategy sessions and the independent work. So that's kind of the work retreat time, the core working hours that we alternate between those two things. And I don't know if I said this before, but we each do 3 dedicated strategy sessions during work retreat. And so we usually start the afternoon that we get there. We have 2 full days, and then maybe the morning that we're checking out or leaving if we need that overflow time. So it ends up being a couple sessions per day with then a few independent work sessions in between. So then aside from that, just like if you were home and working, you're not working from the time that you get up to the time that you go to bed. So yes, we have our dog with us. We go for walks. We have a similar routine to what we have at home. We both work from home here. So when we're on work retreat, it's very similar. We get up, we have breakfast, we take the dog for a walk. Then we come back and we start our working hours for work retreat. But we stop at lunchtime and we have lunch. We usually cook lunch when we're on work retreat if we're in a house, and then take Rory for another walk, and then come back and do a little bit more work, a few hours, maybe till late afternoon. And then since we were close to a little town, we took Rory for a third walk. She loves walks, so she's always up for an extra one, as kind of at the end of the day to kind of just bookend the working hours. But we did actually work more this past work retreat than we would work at home. So we actually did go back after dinner and do like a little bit more independent work usually to kind of just fill the day. But that, yeah, we do include, depending on where we are, if there's a hike nearby or if there's a museum that we want to go to or a restaurant we want to go out to try, we do include some of that stuff too.
Yeah. And I find that those things feed my creativity. You know, it's like being out in nature or doing something that just fills your soul. It kind of invigorates you for your next session or your next,
Yeah, we need to take breaks. We can't just work all the time. And especially because these strategy sessions and the independent work that follows, it's so focused, right? It's that deep work concept that Cal Newport talks about. And really, when we go that deep and we're that focused on one thing for a sustained period of time, we really can only do that for like 4 hours a day. And the rest is shallow work. And that's like your busy work, your emails, making lists, organizing stuff is fine. But that deep work where we're really kind of in the zone and thinking hard about something, it's really taxing when you actually hit that 4-hour mark. So yeah, you need to give yourself some breaks in there.
Yeah. Do you do any of that shallow work, like the emails and social media and stuff like that while you're on work retreat, or do you just set all that aside?
So I try to just focus on what I'm doing for work retreat, and I'll deal with things that come in if it needs my attention, but it ends up being, just a few minutes here and there. But I'm trying not to be in my email or on social media while I'm working, because I'm trying to really just zoom out and put blinders on almost and just focus on what I'm there to think about and not crowd my head with other people's opinions, right? It's input from other people's brains, I think is how Cal Newport talks about it. So the importance of being able to tune out that social media noise or email noise, or people email me, hey, I need this thing when we come back from break next week. Can we move this lesson? Yes, I'll get to that and it's important, but I don't need to do it today while I'm working on these other things.
Can you share with us any kind of transformation that you've had from one of these work retreats, either a breakthrough or something that you figured out or something that where you got a really great result from the work retreat?
So I think I mentioned that I've used a few of our work retreats to evaluate software and new platforms for things in my business. So moving my website from WordPress to Squarespace was something that I kind of figured out during a work retreat one year. And what would that look like to flip over? What would it cost? And is Squarespace the best option, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with moving my email list to Flowdesk in 2019 from the platform I was using before. How's it the same? How's it different? What's it going to cost? What's that going to look like in terms of time to get that flipped over and ready to use? I researched Podia. It was my course hosting platform during work retreat, and reached out to the CEO and owner at the time and asked all my questions during work retreat. That gave me time and space to really focus on, okay, what questions do I have? What do I need to know if this is the right fit for me? And if this is the right time in my business to start investing in a platform like this. But once I made those changes, all three of those instances are good examples. I can point back to that work retreat is where I made that happen. And that has been transformational in my business. Once I got over the hurdle of, I don't know, it's expensive, or am I ready for that? Is it worth it? Is this really the best option? I had to clear all that out and just really zero in on, what do I need in my business? What does this need to look like? What are the options available? And then make an informed decision. So giving myself the time and space to do that research and to make those thoughtful decisions at the time, those have been really key pivotal moments in my music career.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. Okay, so you're like tax guru. I know you're not an accountant or anything, but I have to ask you, is this work retreat a tax write-off for independent music teachers?
It is. It is. So you do need to be mindful of how much of your time is really being spent on your business during the retreat, how much you're really working and how much you're kind of just enjoying, being in this cute little town, Niagara on the Lake, for example. I think the language that the IRS uses is it needs to be ordinary and necessary to your business in order to be a write-off. So it needs to be within reason. So for this last work retreat, as an example, earlier this year, we scheduled out the whole day for work-related activities. And then, like I said, we even went back to work after dinner, which we don't even do at home. So they were full work days dedicated to our businesses. And because of that, we wrote off the full cost of the Airbnb. We wrote off our mileage there and back, the tolls, the food that we brought. And then, we split that between our businesses. But for instance, when we walked into town and we got ice cream one afternoon, or we got a treat from the bakery, we used personal money for that. Because yes, you could argue, we're rewarding ourselves for the hard work that we did. And yes, it was kind of like that. It's not really an ordinary expense per se, and it's not necessary, right? You need food to eat and you need a place to stay. So those are necessary expenses of the retreat. But those little extras that we throw in are kind of treats to ourselves. So oftentimes we'll not count that as business expense. But we have done in the past a 50-50 work retreat / vacation. And so we went and stayed in a hotel with our dog for a few days, but we treated it as half work retreat. So we worked like in the mornings and maybe to early afternoon. And then we took the rest of the day off to go explore and go on walks, different places and things like that. So because we were kind of planning 50% of our time is working and 50% of our time is leisure, we wrote off half of our expenses, half the meals, half the mileage, half the hotel, etc.
So I think I know the answer to this question, but are you going to keep doing work retreats in the future?
Yes. We love work retreats. And again, they've been such an important part of making those strategic, thoughtful decisions as a studio teacher, as a business owner, that I can point back to and say, that's where I made that decision, because I gave myself the time to really step back and look at this from a different perspective and make an informed choice here about the direction that I wanted to go in the future. So I think it's really important. And I'm actually planning to host a virtual work retreat for our teachers this year. So it'll be a time to kind of get it'll be small group. I'm thinking it'll be like a 2-hour online thing. So it'll be a small version of what we're talking about today. It'll be an opportunity to get some business coaching or just have somebody to bounce ideas off of and brainstorm things, to think strategically about your teaching, your studio, your business, where you want things to go, to figure out what you need to learn or what skills you want to develop, to ask questions and get resource recommendations or software recommendations, and then spend that dedicated time working in your business with this built-in accountability of a small group. So if that's something that you're interested in, those of you who are listening, you can go to ashleydanyew.com/workretreat for more information on that.
Great. Thank you so much. I didn't know about that. So that's exciting. If listeners want to get in touch with you beyond finding out about the work retreat, can you tell listeners where to find you? And we'll be sure to put the links in the show notes as well.
So for all things teaching related, piano teaching or music education, information about my podcast, you can go to ashleydanyew.com. And that's also where you can find information on the virtual work retreat. For all things business and entrepreneurship related for musicians and teachers, you can visit musicianandcompany.com. And that's also where the work retreat workbook is. You can go to musicianandcompany.com/resources. And I'm Ashley Danyew on Instagram.
Thank you so much for being here today, Ashley. This was so fun, and I'm feeling inspired about an upcoming work retreat that I'm going on. So this is great. Now I know what to do before I go. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's been my pleasure.
I hope that this episode was helpful for you. I would love to hear if you were inspired to plan your own work retreat and what you would want to focus on during your time away. You can find me on Instagram at Rachel Aaron. That's the end of the show for this week, but next week on the podcast, Clinton Pratt will be my guest to talk about starting a multi-teacher studio. If you have ever considered hiring another teacher or teachers to help out in your studio, you aren't going to want to miss next week's episode. I'm Rachel Aaron, and you've been listening to the Top Music Piano Podcast. I will talk to you very soon.
How do you keep up to date with all the latest trends and research into music education? How do you connect with other teachers around the world and make sure your teaching stays fresh and relevant for students of all ages and stages, both now and into the future? I created our Top Music Pro membership to be the one-stop shop for music teaching resources, training, support, and community, and I'd love for you to come and join us inside. With over 40 comprehensive training courses, hundreds of teaching demonstrations and lesson plans, free monthly sheet music, discounts, and all the business and pedagogy support you could ever need, Top Music Pro is the community you've been looking for. If you're ready to level up your learning from the podcast and join thousands of other teachers in our global network, head over to topmusicpro.com today.